Welcome to the Dark Side Revelations podcast. My name is Jonathan, that is Alex, and today we are doing a deep dive on droids. Um,
Yes.
we're gonna go into the different types of droids and the characters and the history, and this is gonna be a good one. This week there's no Star Wars news again. Uh, Nothing very exciting. A few rumors thrown around about Ahsoka season 2 and Tales of the Jedi and stuff, but nothing really solid that we would want to report on. Hey guys, editing Jonathan here. We said there's no Star Wars news. We record these on Monday, but massive Star Wars news came out on Tuesday, which announced that The Mandalorian and Grogu, which is the official name of the movie, is starting production in 2024. This is the Dave Filoni movie that we learned about at Star Wars Celebration. It's being directed by Jon Favreau and produced by Jon Favreau, Kathleen Kennedy, and Dave Filoni. Um, I'm really excited for this movie. It also confirmed the rumors about Ahsoka season 2. It is in the works. Dave Filoni is actively working on it. And in more big news, they announced that The Mandalorian and Grogu would be taking the lead on their ongoing production. I thought that the Rey Skywalker movie was going to be the next one to come out, but based on the information of The Mandalorian and Grogu taking the lead of production, I would assume that one's going to be the first one to come out. I'm excited for it, and next week on the podcast, Alex and I will be discussing this. I just wanted to throw this in here so you guys knew about the news. Yeah, let's get back to the droids. So I think we should just start off then, go right into the droids, and let's, like we always do, let's start with the history of the droids.
All right. So, droids is for the Star Wars universe, shortened from the word androids, where a mechanical being is created for use by different species to perform tasks that either humans or biological species can't perform, or that they're too complex, or that they just don't want to do. Uh, five classes of droids, and the higher the number generally speaks to the complexity of the task that that specific droid was created for. So class one droids are like medical and mathematical droids. This was the first droid to be created. Uh, they perform calculations that are extremely complex. Medical and science droids usually assisted with operations being performed by biological counterparts. So like if there's a medical droid, there's usually a biological doctor nearby that's doing something, or it would act as like a nurse caregiver capacity where they can do a lot of things by themselves, but usually there would be a biological person there in charge of whatever's going on. They're most expensive of all the droids because of the programming and the engineering that needs to go into them. The class two droids are engineering and technical sciences. This is where a lot of our droids come from. This is the most numerous droid class. This is where like astromechs fall in is in class two. They perform tasks that are too dangerous, complex, or where science could be applied to like life situations. Uh, Class three droids are interactive droids. These ones are generally more humanoid in their design. They're programmed to interact with humans or other races, generally as like a protocol style droid to interpret languages and like care for humans. Like there's records of them being like nannies, midwives, nurses, stuff like that. Not in like the medical droid capacity, but like just taking care of someone. They're the most advanced droids to be created from like the programming aspect, not necessarily the construction.
Yeah.
But if they were more humanoid in their design, there was more engineering involved in the actual construction of them. So there's class four droids, which is the fighters. Uh, they were created for one purpose, and that's combat. There's various styles, but the basic ones are security droids, gladiator droids, the battle droids that we see in all the movies and shows and everything, and assassin droids, which is my personal favorite. There's actually a record of a protocol droid being outfitted to be an assassin droid. And then class 5 is the labor droids. For the lack of a better term, this is where droids were treated like slaves, essentially. They were created to complete tasks that were considered menial or hazardous to life, like just lifting heavy things, moving stuff around. This is where like the gonk droids and the little trash cleanup droids, the tiny little guys you see floating around the Death Star, right? That's a class 5 droid. Uh,
So is it
droid
is it
creation. Sorry.
is it like I was just assuming looking at the show notes, is it the other way around? But is it like the higher or the lower the number, the nicer they are then?
And
Or
as
is
far
it
as like their
more of a when it
demeanor,
was
you mean?
created? Is it
No,
like how are
so
the
it's more
classes
like
done?
that's how the droid progression went. Like as they created more, it's like, oh, this is a different class of droid, and then it falls into this. So essentially, this is the order that they were created in,
Okay, okay,
not
okay.
necessarily which one's the best. Or, I mean, I said earlier, like generally as you go, they get more expensive and more complex. But like class 5 droids, they're not.
Yeah.
They're just the last ones to be added. Of course, they were
Just
turned
that
into weapons before they were turned into laborers, which totally makes sense.
Yeah, but it makes I guess that does make sense to be expensive at the beginning. I guess by the time you get to class 5, you can kind of mass produce some of them and sell them out, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the Techno Union and the Geonosians were famous for producing the most reliable droids. Um, like the original, the first droid can't be nailed down to like this is the year that it happened. However, the languages that the droids use, we do know when that started. So around the year 200 BBY, I'm trying to say this guy's name. Iperio Baobab created the first droid language of Bab Prime to be widely used for creation and communication among droids. So what that means is that like class 1 droids, usually you don't need to talk to them, right? And they don't need to talk to each other until you get droids that need to work together, then they need to communicate. So essentially droids were like computers for the longest time until Baobab created this language that they could interact with each other and eventually, um, humanoids and biologics that would go to understand their languages. There's a variety of droid languages. This was just the first one. Um, the droid language eventually evolved into what we know as binary, which is what R2 and like BD1 and like all the big story droids that don't speak basic. That's what they're speaking is binary. Since droids were given language, if they weren't regularly memory wiped, they would develop a personality, which I thought that was funny. Like you give someone the ability to talk, and then they become a person, which is where like the argument for sentience would show up. Star Wars doesn't have that problem. They just recognize droids as not like a race, but they recognize them as their own individual thing, and they are treated differently. Like there's
Yep.
the is it Solo, where they're in that bar
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
talk to Lando, and I can't remember her name, but she's like fighting for droid rights and everything. It's like because
that
droids are
was just
oppressed and they're
yeah.
looked down upon.
That was one of the best characters in the movie, man.
Yeah, like other than like the security risk of like having plans and communications and um, flight path data on droids, that was the big reason to memory wipe them regularly. Because when they would do a memory wipe, they would also do like a programming update. And if they didn't do that, they would develop a personality. And the droid that quote unquote holds the record for uh, not being memory wiped and reprogrammed the longest is R2D2, which is
Yep.
why he's such a big part of the movies and the shows and everything. Like he has a person. He's treated as a person, in my opinion, other than the fact that he's not allowed to go everywhere.
I mean, Anakin literally just said, "No, I'm not gonna wipe my droid." Right?
Yeah, and it's
And
because he got attached to the personality that R2D2 had developed.
yep,
And like, yeah, he could still be useful. Like R2D2 was one of the most kitted out astromech droids that there was. You can look up all the equipment that he had, and compared to Chopper, he had like twice as much tools and equipment and upgrades at his disposal, even though he was, I want to say, like 50 years older than Chopper was.
yeah, at least like 4 classes apart for the
But the
astromechs.
but like the sad thing is like they're in the same class. They're
They,
they're different designations, right? Like R2 is an R type and Chopper was a C type,
yeah,
which kind of like the classes where you go R and C and whatever. It wasn't a linear through the alphabet, but like at different points in the alphabet, um, they progressed through the development differently. R series was invented first. But do you want to talk about some of the actual types of droids, not just the classes?
yeah. So let's see. I have one, two, three, four, like 8, 9 different main types of droids. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's obviously a lot more than this, but I do want to start with the assassin droid, Alex's favorite apparently. Um,
Yes.
they were used by bounty hunters mostly. Um, they were often tasked with suicide missions. I guess the bounty hunters got lazy; they didn't want to do their job, right? Uh, so they bought a droid, they sent him out, and the whole thing with the assassin droids is they it didn't matter if they survived, right? It didn't matter what happened to the droid as long as they eliminated their target. That was that was the goal. Um,
Yeah.
the most common were the IG droids. Most of them were IG-88 droids, and um, one of these is seen in season 1 of The Mandalorian when Din Djarin finds Grogu. Uh, where I don't remember where it is, but he goes into that building and an assassin droid has the task to kill Grogu.
Yeah,
And
they
then
both
eventually,
they both got the bounty tracker for Grogu,
yeah,
but IG-88, he was a bounty hunter at the time, and due to the assassin programming, he was just going to kill him,
yep,
even though the bounty tag was to retrieve the
yeah,
the youngling. I guess I don't remember what the guy in the Mandalorian called him.
yeah. Uh, so I got confused researching this one because I looked up that droid. And his name is IG-11. That's not a series of droid. It confused me for a second.
Yeah,
Um, and then
the IG
he
is
comes
the
back.
series.
Yeah, and then he comes back later in the show, obviously. And sticking with that battle theme, let's go to battle droids. These droids are mainly used in the Clone Wars that we see them the most, and they were heavily combat driven, and they followed orders to the letter. They were not sentient like the Assassin's droid. They were just programmed to do their task. They were cheap and easy and quick to produce. There were many types of them, right? You have the normal tan ones that go out there and just shoot the bullets, and you have the commanders, and you have I forget all their names,
Those are
but
the tan ones are the B1 battle droids,
yep,
and then the silver ones that look more like they're shrugging all the time. That's the B2 battle droid
yeah,
or
and
super battle droid.
these ones were stupid. Uh, they could walk and shoot. The B1 battle droids and even the higher class battle droids, they didn't have that much decision making. Um,
Mhm.
they like the B1 battle droids were just used to walk and fire because when you have hundreds or thousands of those shooting at once, kind of it's stressful, right? And that's kind of what they were used for. And then the higher tier battle droids would come in and actually do the work. Um,
Yeah,
and then more, Sith Empire droids, whatever. We have the interrogation droids. Um, they were used to torture and question prisoners. They had many, many ways. There's different types of them, and there's many ways to harm the prisoner and whittle their will down. Um, and what I didn't realize and that I learned here is that it separated the officer from the torturer. That was one of the main points of them. After they were tortured by this droid, it allowed a quote unquote friendly officer to come in later and make a fake connection with the prisoner and kind of be fake friend until they eventually spilt their secrets, um, because they mistrusted this officer. That's smart. That's extremely smart. Uh,
Hmm.
I mean,
Well, they
obviously
use
you're
this
right.
in the sequels, right? When Rey gets captured, isn't she interrogated by one of the droids, and
I
then
think so. Yeah.
that's when Kylo goes in and tries his hand at it.
It's
Obviously, it does a
also
better job.
in Rebels. Hera gets interrogated by one too, and Kanan comes in and saves her.
Hmm.
I think. Yeah. And then rest in peace, Kanan. He dies there in that fight. um, and then the next one, the big type, is scout droids. These are most of them were the probe droids, but these ones would use their powerful sensor arrays to scout out an area, a planet, or to track people. Um, they were for exploring. They were used to like map new planets and explore the breathability and the plant life and all that. They're also used in mines, and as we see them the most, they were used as military spies. They would track someone, or they would be surveying a planet, and they would to find someone, right? Um, Most of the time, they were seen as a probe droid, and they would either return information about the land or the people. They would just they speak binary as well, and they would just they have so many sensors on them. I There's a little bit in Wikipedia about what they had. They have so much they can do. Um, Moving into more of the light side droids, as I'll call them, um, that we see as the light side droids, the astromechs. These were used on both sides, but these droids were used in interstellar ships. They were capable of hyperspace navigation, systems monitoring, control, damage repair, and data storage. Um, the droids would uh, aid the pilots in navigation and combat. That kind of aided, or they kind of rivaled the pilot droids because they um, were a lot cheaper to use, and they could use and produce. So it kind of, but they couldn't do everything a pilot droid could do. Um, they would be used with the ship's computers or without. Like there's records of just having astromechs and not having a computer in your ship.
Hmm.
And astromechs were not equipped with vocabulators, so they spoke in with beeps in binary. And this is what R2D2 is. He's an astromech. Same with Chopper, and R2D2 is part of the astromech series we know the most about, the R series. There's R1 to R9 in the R series, and there's also a bunch of sub series, as I'll call them. Um, we don't know a lot about each R series droid, but especially we know a lot about the R2 series, obviously, so we know about a bunch of sub series in there. Um, and then we have the protocol droids. These were mostly used in diplomatic affairs and mostly used as translators. Um, they had thousands of language and dialects stored in their memory banks, but unfortunately for Rey, the Republic protocol droids were programmed not to speak the translated Sith language, and that really just threw a whole wrench in her plan. Uh,
Yeah.
these droids were programmed to have personalities. There was a name for the systems, but it was a essential part of their function that they would be able to emulate whoever they were, the feelings and stuff of whoever they were translating, and use that personality in the diplomatic relationships. And this is C3PO is a protocol droid, and obviously he has a big personality, so
Yeah.
we see that a
And you
lot.
can almost, like when we went to the the Star Wars outpost, the shop over at Disney Springs,
Yeah,
then they sell the little personality chips for the different droids that you get. That's essentially a very dumbed down version of what the protocol droids got. Was they were afforded the opportunity to have a personality so that they could read emotional cues through the other races and interpret that, convey it to the person talking to them, and convey it back to
yeah,
the person that they were translating for.
yeah,
Because most of communication isn't at all what you say; it's how you say it and the way that your face looks when you say it. and that was a huge part of the protocol droids is they had to be able to read. Like, yeah, they spoke thousands of languages, but if they didn't know the social cues, it was
Yeah,
useless.
yeah. Um, I read some about it, but the amount of programming that it took to get this down was insane. Like they spent so long researching this and testing it, and a lot of failed protocol droids. Um, and then the next one I'm going to talk about, I mentioned them earlier, but the pilot droids. They were used to, you guessed it, pilot ships. Um, they had an extensive database of star systems and hyperspace lanes, and they looked into they hooked into the ship's computer systems and were able to monitor and repair damage like the astromechs were able to do. Um, and they were so good. They're also good in combat situations because they wouldn't panic under fire. Right? They would pilot with the same precision no matter the situation. That again, as as it happens, they were turned into fighter pilots eventually because of that factor. Because they're just programmed and they're not don't have fear. They also were
Mm-hmm.
able to store the ship's plans um, in their database, which was helpful for the repairs and all of that too.
Yeah, and like
And then
this
the final.
is
Oh, sorry.
that was the one that L3 was. I remembered her name
Yeah,
for Lando's ship. The when he had it, the Millennium Falcon, before her memory bank was integrated into the Falcon, she was the pilot droid for the Falcon,
yeah,
and you can see this for the I'll call them the separatists right now, I guess. When they made the pilot droids and they wanted to make droid ships, they just took the pilot droids and built a ship around the droid that already existed,
yeah.
which was it cut costs and it was a quicker option, but they took a pilot droid and built a ship around it.
That's where we see the pilot droids the most is in the
Yeah.
separatist ships. They're not really seen that much anywhere else, or nowhere really significant enough. Um,
Yeah.
and then the final major droid type I want to talk about are the medical droids. They were obviously used in the medical field, and they offered advantages over other species, like sentient species, because they could hold an extensive amount of knowledge in their memory banks and never forget any of it. This led them to calculate the best way to fix a problem, right? They knew everything they could possibly do and the goods and the bads of all of it. Um, these droids were experts at analyzing diseases, infections, and finding the best ways to fix them. They had built-in tools and easily hot swappable tools built into them, so that they could really work and do anything. And this allowed them to work on um, uh, alive patients, and because originally they were just used as assistants before they were got the skills and the programming and the sensors and stuff to do their own operations. Um, they were not sentient. They just analyzed data and had programming to and ran off programming and commands. And the first thing I thought about writing this was the inhibitor chip medical droids. If they are sentient, would they have done that? Probably not. And I'm pretty sure in the Clone Wars show, the droids tried to stop them from leaving because they didn't finish their implant or they took it out or something. Like I'm pretty sure in that episode where they go and they try to
When Fives goes back to Camino,
yeah yeah when Five goes
yeah,
back to
so
Camino
they were trying to stop him from removing the chip. I remember the I don't remember the clone that went with him, but once they did remove the chip, um, the medical droid like locked down that room so that
yeah
he couldn't get away with that information, and it bordered on the line of sentience at that point because it was he was talking to the droid. He's like, "Let me go," and the droid's like, "No, I can't let you go." He's like, "Why?" I was like, "Well, I don't have clearance to that information,
I'm just here to
but
put
I
in
just know it's
your
part of my program. I can't let you go." Right?
yeah yeah really just they didn't have any free will. Put in the inhibitor chips and then obviously he got a command to not let the droid leave. And obviously there are a lot of other droids with a lot of other uses. big example, Hu Yang.
Yep.
But these are the main ones. There was like a list of like 20 extra types of droids that I
Yeah.
found, but obviously we don't need to go over every single type of droid. Um, and then I want to talk about the actual characters. Let's now that we have the information of the classes and the types, let's go into the characters and where they fall in line with all this.
All right, so we talked about it a little bit already, but like R2 was the first one that I jumped on, and it was hard not to just write down everything I could about R2 and like what he does, and um, just like the big thing about R2 is that he's an astromech droid. He's an R series 2 astromech droid, originally in the service of Queen Amidala of Naboo. So like when they left Naboo with, baby Anakin, sorry, when they
Yeah.
left Tatooine with baby Anakin, um, that was that was R2. Before he had a personality, he had received regular memory wipes and maintenance and all that. Um, he was fitted with many, many different astromech equipment and tools. Like if you look up the article on him, it's like the list is like this. It's like he's got like 30 different things. Like there isn't something that R2 couldn't do. Um, he was one of the few droids to never receive a full memory wipe or programming upgrade. And another one that never got proper upgrades and stuff like that was Chopper, which is in the um, Rebels show. His designator is C1 10P. He's an astromech unit that served the Rebels under Harrison Dula. And due to his lack of regular maintenance, he developed a cranky attitude. So they didn't have the resources to take care of him. Like taking care of a droid properly is expensive. And when you're trying to just jump around and stay hidden, buying those things and keeping up on your actual droid maintenance is really expensive. And not only that, it's logged. So you can be tracked by your droid. So that's one of the reasons that he wasn't regularly upkept. But it's funny because he was legitimately cranky, where like R2 was more like sneaky and playful and stuff like that, kind of
Yeah.
sarcastic almost. Chopper was just an angry old dude. Um, he also, fun facts, has the highest registered kill count of any droid, uh, which can be as high, depending on how many people were on them, as high as 50,000 because he took down two Star Destroyers by himself,
Oh man,
which
Chopper's
I
just
thought was
oh
just absolutely bonkers.
yeah.
But those are like the two like really useful, really prominent uh, astromech droids that we see the most of. Other than the protocol droid C3PO, he was actually built by Anakin. He didn't exist before Anakin worked on him. He isn't something that he fixed up. He legitimately created him. Um, he was fluent in 6 million languages,
Holy crap.
and that's not because like when you think about protocol droids, most protocol droids are fluent in all active languages,
Yeah.
but C3PO was fluent in dead languages, which is where when he read that ancient language of the Sith and couldn't translate it for him, that's where that came into play. Like a normal, if they would have a regular protocol droid, the regular protocol droid would have had no idea what the language even was.
Yeah. And a normal protocol droid wouldn't have been going on stuff like that. They would have been
That's
in
true.
in Coruscant or whatever. I guess not at
Yep.
that time, but
And then another fun Star Wars fact: instead of exchanging rings at their wedding and like being formally, galactically formally married, when Anakin and Padme got married on Naboo, they traded R2D2 and C3PO, and that was their symbolic exchange of rings. Was because like if you look into it, Anakin had no business with R2 until that happened,
yeah.
and then after that, they are literally glued at the hip 24/7. So I thought that was cool.
That's pretty funny.
My personal favorite droid, Hu Yang, He's a Mark IV architect professor droid. So he was created for multiple purposes. He was created for the Jedi Order. Um, he worked the longest on the Jedi vessel called the Crucible, which we see in Clone Wars, and I'm not sure if we see it in Rebels. And correct me if I'm wrong, that's the ship that they have in Ahsoka. Is that the Crucible?
I think so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so like he wasn't necessarily assigned to that ship. It's almost like that was his ship
Yeah.
for his duties in the Jedi Order. He was created in 25,020 BBY. He helped younglings to learn, grow. He taught them history, stuff like that. And most importantly, or at least the biggest thing that we see, is that he was the one, not a Jedi Master. He was the one that was responsible for taking Padawans to Ilum and helping them get their kyber crystal and helping them build their lightsaber. And he kept a digital archive of every lightsaber that was ever created in his presence.
I want to share something. I just pulled the timelines book. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, this is the first page of timelines we have. Okay. The first event is the birth of the Jedi and 25,025 BBY. The second event in this entire book is Professor Hu Yang powered up at 25,020 BBY. This is the
I
second
didn't know
canon
that.
event
That's
we know
awesome.
of in the history of Star Wars.
It's literally the oldest thing in the galaxy. Almost predates the Jedi by like this much.
Oh man.
That's funny.
Oh.
Oh, dude, I had no idea. That's so cool.
Oh.
I didn't realize that. So, what did the Jedi do for 5 years without him? Right? You said it
That's
was
a good question. They made
twenty-five
Hu Yang
thousand
for
and
5 years. That's what
twenty-five,
they
right?
did. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it probably took that long.
Yeah. To program him and give him all the knowledge that they knew. Yeah.
That's so cool. But next on my list was one of my favorites is the IG-88B. He was the assassin droid. Not IG-11, not the one we see in The Mandalorian, but the one that we see in, I believe it's the original trilogy, where he worked as a bounty hunter and he, for whatever reason, developed a desire to like hunt and kill organic beings. Like not just like an assassin droid following his programming or like a bounty hunter doing his job. He almost like relished at the fact that he got to go and like kill an organic. And because of this, he was recruited by Darth Vader to go and hunt down the Millennium Falcon. Which that's the scene where they have him. I believe that's where Bosk is also in there, and is it Boba at that point? Yeah, it'd be Boba Fett at that point. Is they're all contracted to go and find the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
I don't know. He didn't have anything special. Like he didn't have any special weapons or abilities or anything like that. He just had a bloodthirst for organics. Right. So next on my list was BB-8. He's a BB series astromech droid. He was created in 29 ABY and was used by the rebel pilot Poe Dameron in his specially designed X-wing. He was a more simple droid compared to the R series and the C series astromechs. Not just in the fact that he was smaller, but he just didn't have as many tools. Um,
I don't think he did. He have
he
any tools?
also he did. He
Like
had I
R2 did.
want to say like 5 or 6 tools.
Okay.
He was able to throw things. He was able to laser cut and weld things. He was able to pick things up, which again is a tool.
Yeah.
And there's a few other ones that I don't remember. He also had a
All right.
scanner,
Yeah.
and his scanner was red, if I'm not mistaken. Um, he also never got a full memory wipe, but unlike Chopper, he was regularly maintained. So because of that, he developed like a bubbly, almost playful personality. Wasn't really based on so much like sarcasm and disgruntledness. Uh, Also, compared to the other droids, he was very young in comparison. Like R2 is, technically he's like 7 something, and BB-8 is like 4 or 5. Most of the movies happen that he's in.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he gets older as everyone else does, but he was
Just
created 29
created.
years after the Battle of Yavin.
Yeah.
He was a little bit more advanced, but even still, he just didn't have as many tools. Sorry. Um, but my last droid on my list, uh, personal favorite of mine, a non-combat droid, is BD-1, and we see BD-1's adventures in the video games Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. He was created at the end of the Galactic Republic and used by Jedi Master Eno Cordova until he was left on a planet waiting for a Jedi to pick up where Cordova left off. Uh, Jedi Cal Kestis, I'm going to call him Jedi Knight Cal Kestis, depending on where you're at in the games. Um, he accompanied him on his adventures in both of the games. And the cool thing about him is, again, he never got um, a memory wipe. He was pretty well taken care of for the most part. But he was like upgradable as you went along. It's like if you needed something, it got added to him, and that was that. There was no programming involved. You just slapped it on him, laser welded it, and that's that, right?
Yeah.
Which I kind of wish that some of the other droids would have that. Like there was the one instance where R2 got an upgrade after the is in the Clone Wars show.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, where a bunch of those astromech droids all went on a mission, and he's the one that like earned the reward or whatever.
Yeah. He had that little tiny like commander that had his own droid he controlled.
Yeah,
I forget his name, but that was a. It was actually one of the few droid episodes I watched because most of the Clone Wars droid episodes were fillers, but that one was pretty. That series was pretty good.
it's the one that actually did something.
Yeah.
It wasn't just R2 and C3PO. What are we doing here? How can
There
we
was a
not
lot of
help?
those.
It's like
Yeah.
C3PO's entire life. Dude knows 6 million languages. He's about as useful as a bag of hammers. But I don't know. That's everything I had for like the character droids. That's the big ones that most anybody would know.
Yeah.
Minus BD-1, that's dependent on whether you play the video games. But
He's my favorite.
yeah,
I love BD1. He's got a fun personality.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all we have today, Alex. Any final thoughts?
I do have one final thought, and that is never underestimate a droid.
Oh man, that's a good one. Yeah. Um, yeah. Who
All right,
do you
what are we
know
what are we talking about next week?
next week? Okay. Next week we're doing a Jedi deep dive. Um, so we're just gonna we're gonna go into the Jedi like we did the Sith a couple episodes ago, and it's gonna be one a lot easier to research, and two be a lot less mysterious than the Sith episode because they were obviously not as secretive as the Sith for about 1,000 years. There's 1,000 years of public Jedi instead of secretive Jedi. um, yeah, that's it. Hopefully it doesn't spoil. Hopefully my research doesn't spoil the High Republic books.
I'm gonna try my best.
Yeah.
Try my best.
Um, you can find all of our social medias for the podcast at DS Revelations, as you see on the bottom of your screen if you're watching it. We are on Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. And on YouTube and TikTok, we're posting shorts every Monday and Friday at the moment. So go check them out. Show us some love and support. And if you would like to reach us, Twitter is the fastest way to do that. You can find my Twitter as well at the Jonathan J. What about you, Alex?
Yeah, mine's at Darth Pauling.
All right, that's all we have for you. We'll catch you guys next week to talk about the Jedi.